Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. We're three guys based in Utah. I'm Kirk.
I'm Joel.
And I'm Lyric.
And the goal of our show is to share stories and beliefs from different people local to our area.
Our mission is to bring civil discourse and allow people who hold different faiths a platform to tell us what they believe.
The show's model consists of an interview episode and a follow-up response episode where we'll discuss the topics that were brought up with our guests in the initial interview and give our take from a biblical standpoint.
Full disclaimer, not all comments and opinions expressed by our guests represent our own opinions. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy this episode.
All right, welcome to Faith and Fellowship, a podcast produced by Arch City Church. I am Pastor Kirk, and we have actually with us today
Two guests,
yeah, because usually the podcast is myself, Lyric, and Joel. But Joel is not able to be with us, and so we have my daughter Lana with us today. So do you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi. This is exciting.
Yeah, we're happy to have her here. Joel, a lot of you we won't rehash everything that's taken place this past summer, but just because of circumstances and a tragic accident in our family, Joel is traveling with his family and helping them, and we are praying for him, and hopefully he will be back with us at the end of this year or the beginning of 2024. So I'm sure he's still going to be editing this podcast, so he's still going to be involved, but it's going to be kind of it's going to be sad that he's not on the podcast because he does bring something to it. We enjoy him, so hopefully he'll be back with us soon. So, how's it going, Lyric?
Good. I'm really excited for today. This has been something we've been wanting to happen in the works for a while now. So,
yeah, absolutely. If you've ever done a podcast, it's tough because you want to stay consistent. And you want to make sure that you're staying true to your mission statement. And for us, we want to hear people's stories, and those stories could be either people who are part of Arch City Church and like we have done in the past, or we want to be able to bring people in who maybe believe differently, and we want to hear their story. And because people have unique stories and of their faith and their walk and how they have decided to follow their teaching or follow Jesus, and so we want to hear those. And so this has been something in the making for a while. Excited. And so, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, well, I'll say some quick stuff, and then if you want to go ahead and give the introduction. But we're joined today by Father Justin. I'm going to mispronounce it. Saint Xenia Orthodox Church in Payson, Utah. Yeah, thank you for coming on today. If you don't mind giving a quick introduction, a little bit about yourself, and then we got some questions that'll go into your history because we think it's interesting in Orthodox Church in Payson, Utah. So,
yeah, I'm an Orthodox Christian priest. I always say Orthodox Christian because you say Orthodox.
Could be confused with Jewish, yeah.
Are you Russian? Are you Greek? Like, it's confusing. So I always say Orthodox Christian priest, and I've been in Utah for 20 years, my wife and I, and our 10 children, and I was a priest at downtown Salt Lake City, Saints Peter and Paul, for a number of years. And then a couple of years ago, we felt called to bring the ancient faith to Utah County, which, of course, when I walk around wearing what I wear, like traffic stops, and people think I'm a goth or whatever it is, and even with the cross on and such. So, but it's been really providential. My wife and my children moved down here and really love it, and people are hungry for the gospel. I think that Utah County is one of the richest mission fields in the world, actually, at least from the Orthodox Christian perspective. Really quickly, I was raised Protestant. I was raised Presbyterian. I did a lot of seeking when I was young, went to college, blew off my faith in many ways, was reading Eastern religion, learned ancient Greek, did everything. And it was actually the reading of the Gospel of St. John, translating it from Greek, that brought me back to Christ. And, there's 1,000 names for God in Islam, but love is not one of them. That God is love. And really the confusing part then was, well, where do I go to church? Because there's like I don't know, 20,000 denominations of Christianity,
Right.
which led me on it, and some saying diametrically opposed things, which for a while I said, forget it, I don't need church at all, I'll just do it myself. But then in Greek, there's this word, ecclesia. You can't do it by yourself, and the church is the pillar of the truth. And Paul, gosh. So long story short, I traveled the world, went everywhere. What's the original? I wanted to get back to the original was the idea. I didn't believe that there was an apostasy like the Mormons did and things like this. Long story short, became an Orthodox Christian. My wife's also an Orthodox Christian and convert and survived Columbine. She was almost killed at Columbine, my wife.
Oh, wow.
And so I finished college at St. John's College in New Mexico, and then went to seminary back east. And then we came here about 20 years ago, serving the church. So that's who I am.
Wow. Well, that's a lot to unpack.
Sorry.
And no.
That's a lot.
It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. And I just want to maybe you can go just a little bit, if we can kind of break that apart some.
Sure.
So you were raised Presbyterian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where was that at?
I'm from Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York.
I don't have maybe joked my mom beat the accent out of me. No, she never hit me. But
Yeah.
she had a very deep accent, like, whoa, coffee, and like, but I have some of it with certain words. But I grew up in eastern Long Island. It's called the Hamptons now, but I come from a fishing family that came in the 1600s from England. And I grew up, my grandfather's a fisherman to this day, and he's 90, and it was a great way to grow up. So I grew up in an old whalers church like you'd see in Moby Dick movie. And the ancestors in the cemetery and the presbytery from the 1600s, you can do graves all the way to my great-grandparents. It's pretty continuous. So that was just kind of automatic. But there's something about small-town America that it's just beautiful and confusing. One corner is the Presbyterian church. Other corner is the Catholic church. Other corner is the Methodist church. Other corners, and I wasn't really sure why I was going where. I mean, just like because the youth group had girls and go bowling or something, and maybe I would go to the other youth group, and it was pretty non-discerning in some sense. And I wasn't anybody else's shallowness but my own, maybe, and I didn't know depth. So I loved the people, I loved the culture, I loved my little small town, but I was pretty convinced like truth is elsewhere, and I went looking right in all the wrong places, but I guess I had to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So you were raised in New York, and you're getting to college age. And is that when you say you started your kind of looking for truth in other places? And did that start with like just American like humanism and like college? That kind of. I'm not sure.
Not to interrupt. We might need you to talk just a little bit closer to the mic, if that's okay.
I'm not sure I was ever really serious about my faith as a Christian, to be frank. I don't remember a time never believing in God, to be honest. But in retrospect, there wasn't much teaching. To be honest, the church I went to, I mean, it was in retrospect shocking from an Orthodox Christian perspective. Like I went to church all the time. I was like leading classes, and I had hardly read the Bible. I mean, didn't fast, didn't do it. I mean, really, I knew nothing. Not really. If you had asked me where the Bible came from, I would have told you. There's like, it just floated down from, so I knew nothing about history or anything, and yet somehow I'm teaching. So I guess that frustrated me, but it was more my own inner frustration. And I think it was my passions, that age of my passions, I mean the wrong way, what's my life about? And certainly wasn't about Jesus. And certainly it was, I played high school basketball and I wanted to be popular and I cared about girls liking me and I cared about all the wrong things. So I was just like ready to blow it off, and I never stopped believing in God. It wasn't some kind of rebellion like this. It was just like, I'm going to look elsewhere.
Right.
So that began, I would say, even before I left for college. But then when I went to Hippieville, Santa Fe, New Mexico, like for a New York boy at this great books college, to ancient Greek and all these things. And my eyes were big as saucers and, just reading all this Eastern stuff I had never read before, So you
moved from New York to New Mexico.
For undergraduate, yeah.
And what was the name of the college?
It's called St. John's College.
Okay.
It's a very unique place. There's two campuses. It's based kind of an Oxford model. There's no choice of classes all 4 years. It's all pre-planned. First other campuses in Annapolis, Maryland. It's really beautiful. Essentially, it's like a liberal arts, but it's like you take Greek and you take...
Is it an Orthodox school?
No, not at all. Oh. Ooh, no, it's a secular school, big time. I mean, but when you learn Euclidean geometry, you read Euclid, like the actual Euclid, right? You don't have any textbooks at all original texts is the idea. And everything's spoken like this. There's like a Don system, like a seminar system. There's no exams all 4 years. It's all like essays and presentations and spoken. And so you read all the trivium, you read all these ancient things. So you're reading Aristotle, Plato from the ancients, and then sophomore year, you read like Lucretius and all the Latin philosophers. And of course you read the Gospels and a number of things. So you go through all philosophy, religion, science, all from original standpoint. And I think that was actually ultimately led me back to Christ, because the emphasis was on getting back to the original, not just like calculus was miserable in high school.
Right.
But then when you read Newton's Principia and you see how he discovered it, I understood what I was doing, right? So kind of going back to the beginning helped me. And I think that was the case of kind of getting back to the original with Christianity. That was a helpful motivation or push, I guess, that eventually took place.
What were you going to school to get a degree in? What was the end goal before you decided to become an Orthodox Christian?
It was a funny answer to that question. I mean, I was going to be a doctor before I left, probably because of my ego. We were poor as well. And I wanted to, my grandfather's the greatest man I know, and I wanted to rescue him from poverty, and he was fine. But I'm sure, it's kind of like they say about a pilot, how do you know there's a pilot at your party? Don't worry, he'll tell you. I think I had some ego in that about being a doctor, and I didn't see it at the time. But that was my plan. But going to St. John's isn't quite the way to do it. We have a joke you finish and you can work at McDonald's. Or you can go to any grad school you want. You can go anywhere because it's really a great education, but it doesn't have much practical. To be a doctor, I would have had to take a whole other year of stuff to really get ready for it and take the MCAT and stuff. But that was my end goal. And I think, like my grandfather says, you did become a doctor. Like a spiritual doctor. That's how we see priesthood as being, in the church as a hospital. That's a priest's job, is to be helping people be healed by Christ. So I feel like it's a fulfillment of what I wanted, but it definitely wasn't not the paycheck, that's for sure.
Yeah, it didn't quite bring the financial aspect to it.
But thank God for that, for my pride and my ego. I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah. So one of the things that, if you could, just for our audience sake and for us too, I think we all have limited understanding of what the Greek Orthodox Church is. So maybe you could just shine a little bit of light on, and if it ties into your personal story and how you navigated to it, maybe that would help too. But what would be considered the origin of, the where and the when of the Greek Orthodox Church?
Great question, and really confusing. And when people ask me, are you Greek Orthodox? Are you Russian Orthodox? Well, they're exactly the same thing, to clear that up. And that's confusing because it makes people think that it's only for Russian people, only for Greek. I mean, there's neither Greek nor Jew, St. Paul says. So our church is actually under the Antiochian diocese, and I'll explain what that means. So just simply speaking, Orthodox Christians. And Orthodox Christianity makes a bold claim that it's the original church. We're not imitating the original church. It is the original church, because at least as a Protestant, and I think most Mormons and ex-LDS people, they think this way too. Through the apostles, okay, we're following you. But then at some nebulous time, for some restorationists, even some people who are Christians, and then for LDS people, it's like there's this nebulous darkness, and then insert other person here, right? So I was pretty unaware of history. So a big part of my journey was, what is history, and I went back and found that, and I read what's called the Apostolic Fathers, right after the Gospels. Like you read Irenaeus of Lyon and Justin the Martyr. And this is first century, almost contemporary with the canonical scriptures. And, this is an atheist friend giving me these books. He said, there's something objective about this search. It's not like my feelings or your feelings. And I came to I found an old encyclopedia of religion, which was very interesting. And it said, blah, 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 this founder, Wesley. This founder, Calvin, this founder, Joseph Smith, Orthodox Church founder, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, that's simplistic, but the point was simply in my research, I found that, wow, the Divine Liturgy, that's the Eucharist service we serve, the teaching, the way, doesn't matter if you're in Timbuktu or if you're in Russia or if you're in Greece, no difference in teaching, no difference in dogma. And it's been that way since the beginning. And you can trace it first, second, third century, and anywhere in the world. The language is different, the chanting, maybe the style of music was different, but the exact same belief. In our consumer society where you can hardly agree about anything, this was amazing to me. Mm-hmm. So I traveled and looked at them and go to Jerusalem, to the place where Christ was buried and resurrected. That's an Orthodox church. So I thought Orthodoxy was so weird. so freakishly weird. And I guess I look weird to the world, my long hair, my beard, and my robe. But what I found was, there was an original way to doing it. So Orthodox Christians just simply say, and this isn't a judgment of the Christians, we just simply say there's one Christ. So there's one church. There can be multiple Christs, multiple churches. So we make this bold claim that there's been an unbroken line from the apostles until now. Like, I was ordained to the priesthood by our bishop, Metropolitan Joseph, who was ordained by the Patriarch of Antioch, Metropolitan, this time before he died, Patriarch Ignatius. And on paper, I think he's the 81st or something. You can trace it back all the way to the first bishop of Antioch, who was St. Peter. So there's a real emphasis on apostolic succession, apostolic doctrine. Because a Catholic could say we have apostolic succession too.
Right.
And
the Catholics would say that the Pope goes back all the way to Peter, right?
Right. And that's a whole other big issue.
Yeah.
But we would simply say for the first 1,000 years, there was a unity in Christianity. And it didn't matter east and west. And there were married priests and there were monastic priests. And there was, there was separation that took place. And that's a bigger issue. But essentially, for the first while, you had these ancient centers of Christianity, the Pentarchy, starting in Jerusalem, and you had Constantinople, you have Alexandria, Antioch, where you have these ancient and they would come together if there's a doctrinal issue. Someone was attacking that Christ wasn't fully God. If they were attacking the belief that was, our society is kind of like, if you believe this, it doesn't really matter. But Christ always says, who do men say that I am? So this unifying idea of faith was so powerful to me. And I dove into it big time. I read it, learned ancient Greek. I did these things I was learning. And I became convinced that this was the original church. I didn't have to make it up on my own or find it. Like, the original church still exists, because the Orthodox Church just kind of never had a crusade, we didn't learn about it in school. I grew up in New York, wasn't under a rock, never heard of the Orthodox Church. I thought it was like, I had Greek friends or something, but it was like Eastern Catholicism or something. And if you're a Protestant, you just naturally just go like, I'm not going to be Catholic, So I just never knew about this beauty. And it just kind of plodded along through the Roman persecutions, through the Orthodox Christians in Greece and in the Middle East, horrible. The attacks of the Ottoman Empire and the ravages.
Armenian genocide.
Horrible. And just never experienced all the struggles that came along with the Renaissance, with the Dark Ages, and Martin Luther's theses on the wall in Wittenberg, Orthodox Christians would have agreed with those. Mm-hmm. We would have said he should have looked back to attach himself to the original rather than what happened.
Starting something.
The Orthodox Church goes, we're just going to do our thing here. And there was this difference with Roman Catholicism, and then Roman Catholicism had these, and then there was like this break into a million branches, which makes some sense. And the Orthodox Church kind of quietly plodded along the exact same way, pretty unknown to people, right? Mm-hmm. Until now, though. Orthodox Christianity is one of the fastest growing groups of Christians in America, for sure. In the world, people are discovering, they want something that's not going to change on a whim. Right. Morality is not going to change. Things aren't going to change, though. And I think so. That's in a nutshell what Orthodoxy is. But it's not about being Greek. It's not about being Russian. It's just simply we have 20 ethnicities on a Sunday at our church. I've done pilgrimage all over the world, different Orthodox countries. 1,000 years, Ireland was Orthodox Christian, so we love St. Patrick, and there's so many great saints there, priest schism and such. So
right.
Hope that's helpful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really helpful. That's cool. How would you, who would you say is writing currently about the things that you just kind of spoke about? Is there a push to, for people to author books about the history of the Orthodox Church? For sure. One of the most fundamental texts that was done was by a convert in the church last century. He's passed away recently. His last name is Ware, W-A-R-E. Mm-hmm. He wrote a book just called The Orthodox Church. And that's a nice introduction. He was a convert from Britain, and he did a good job explaining it. The first half is history. Second half is kind of the mysteries of what the beliefs of the Orthodox Church. It's a good beginning. But in terms of modern folks, there's a lot of people who one of my favorite authors and teachers is a man named Father Josiah Trenum. Mm-hmm. And he has a whole ministry called Patristic Nectar Publications, and it's incredible. He's a priest of a huge community in Riverside, California, but he has beautiful teachings, catechism, the lives of the saints, history, all these things. So there's plenty, there's plenty of basic books. But I think that's a fundamental text. And I think that it's been done a lot, to be honest. The question is what's being done in English, right? Because now Orthodoxy is relatively new, past couple hundred years, and past 50 years. 50 years ago,
want to be an Orthodox Christian, it was hard to find many books in English, right? And now...
What was the language most of them were being written?
I think just the originals, either Greek or they were in Russian or Serb, which they were just from their home countries, right? We have great Romanian saints and all these. And now as the faith is growing and people they're translating them, and there's hundreds and hundreds of beautiful Orthodox Christian books, like What is the History of the Church and Getting to Know the Faith is a great book. So there's definitely no lack now. We have a whole radio station called Ancient Faith Radio, and it's international. And I think there's millions of listeners. And actually, I did a podcast for them on Orthodoxy in Utah, Ancient Faith Radio. So it has also Orthodox music. Orthodox music is so stinking beautiful. No, it's the best. Forgive me. It's because if you go to Russia,
I'm a fan of Christos and this.
Christ is risen with a 400-person kids choir. Or I went to Tbilisi, Georgia, and 100 of these chanters in this church that fits 15,000 people. Or you go to Greece and you hear this Byzantine chant. That's kind of, we use them Byzantine. There's just something so otherworldly about it and so heavenly about it. That was definitely a draw to me too. The beauty, the beauty of the icons and the mosaics and the, Dostoevsky says beauty will save the world. In an ugly utilitarian world, something about the beauty of the service. St. John talks in the book of the Apocalypse about, the candles and the altar and the incense and this heavenly worship. And when you definitely come into the Orthodox Church, there's a real sense of reverence. Mm-hmm. But it's comfortable. We call it it's like a womb. You feel you're comfortable, but not like chilling comfortable. Like you're comfortable, but you want to be, God is there. One of the greatest explanations is when Vladimir of Russia was seeking for religion for his people, in late 900s. He sent emissaries all over the world to the different religions and report back to me. He was seeking for truth, which is beautiful for a ruler to do something like this. And he sent emissaries to Constantinople, present-day Istanbul, to the largest Christian church in the world called Hagia Sophia. It's a mosque now, unfortunately. And the liturgy was just spectacular, the Eucharist service. And they came back and said, what was it like? He said, I don't know, but I didn't know if we were in heaven or on earth. We just knew that God dwells there. It was, and based on that, he had emissaries come and teach, and then that was what they call the baptism of Rus in 988. The people of Russia were crazy pagans, and they were tamed by the love of Christ, and since that time, so I find that to be kind of that was a whole people, but at least in my soul, that was pretty similar. I think I was maybe not a pagan, but had plenty of issues, and the beauty of Christ and the beauty really drew me, not just mentally. I think we have a society that's so about it's overly intellectual. I mean, we need to use our mind and brain, but a big part of it was the beauty of the music and the singing. And it pushed through my judgment, because I was just like, I'm not interested in Christianity at all. I'm just not interested. And then I heard it, and I was just crying. So I broke through. Like the beauties made me suspend my judgments to humble my heart in some way. So
it's like a combination, really.
It has to be,
yeah, because you've already talked about and I could say it's the same in my testimony, my personal story, that Christianity is intellectual. There's faith, but there's also knowledge, and specifically, like in your case, you're talking about not just knowledge of the Bible, but knowledge of history and seeing that unbroken kind of succession.
Absolutely.
And so, like I've talked to people before, no matter what denomination there's been, or it doesn't even have to be paired with Christianity. It could just be spiritual. I feel this, and
right.
But at the same time, we do, like you're saying, there is an essence that God uses His Spirit to open our eyes and soften our hearts with things that aren't connected per se to the intellectual side of it. And so that's really cool.
I'm glad you mentioned the intellect, because they're both important. That's really, because if not, then it can just be a tyranny of your feelings, right? It can be an emotional. I think that's a big thing in the LDS Church, burning in my bosom. But who's in charge of that train? Like, where's the check? Like, I just know in my heart that this is really true. If I just meditate in your heart, well, if I meditate in my heart about the Lion King, I might get a warm fuzzy too. Like, in other words, and I often tell them, I'll say to the missionaries that come, I love them. I say, hey, how do you know this is true? And they say, well, I just know it's true in my heart. Like, that's a very subjective thing. That I'm like, no, don't go there. I can't go there. I said, but do you know what Jesus, and of course they don't know the scriptures, forgive me, I love them, they don't know the Bible, or the Gospels at least. I say, what does Jesus say is in the heart of man? And a perfect barometer of truth, special for you, Johnny. No, what does Jesus say? In the heart of man is lies and deceptions. And so that's the given in the fallen man is blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And so from an Orthodox perspective, we say, my heart's not totally purified yet. I want it to be, and I'm working on it with God's help and with repentance. But in the meantime, I'm going to follow those whose hearts were purified, which were the apostles and the saints. And this is something that there's an accountability point in Orthodoxy and a humbling point of, if God comes to me and says, hey, I have the real knowledge and none of these other things are true and I have to make my own religion. There would be a check on that. And there would be, and that's called humility. And that's built into the scriptures, we would say. It's built into the saints. And so knowledge of the Gospels. A lot of people are like, 80% of America still self-identifies as Christian.
Right.
But like abortion through the roof, like transgender, people are totally confused, totally lost. And people can't even quote. They don't even know the basic Gospels, right? So being informed by St. Paul and being informed by the apostle writers, it gives us an accountability point to bump up against. Like what St. Paul says, put on the mind of Christ.
Right. Like
you're saying. So I think there's a place where the mind has to work and then where the heart takes over. And by the heart, I don't mean the flaky emotions. I mean, there's a depth there. So it seems like you get overemphasis in some places on the overly emotional, such that discernment can be lost. But then on the other side, it could be this cold, overly intellectual and rational, which doesn't account for our souls in some way, right? So I'm really glad you said that. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
Well, I just wrote down some questions, taking it back a little bit to your story, if that's okay.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit, how does an Orthodox church come to be, Orthodox Christian church come to be in Payson? How did that all kind of happen? Why did you choose Payson? Because for those who, we don't have a video or anything like that, but look up Father Justin's church. It's absolutely beautiful. He's got a really pretty church and it sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb amongst Payson. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about that.
I mean, I really love Utah. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could tell you where Utah was on a map when I was a kid because that's where the Mormon lives. That's all a New York boy knows. And they have nice mountains, maybe or something.
Skiing.
Maybe
Olympics in 2002. Yeah.
God kind of. When we moved after going to seminary for a bit, we were living in Colorado. My wife's from Denver, from Littleton, and again, that was her story of. She'd be a good person to have a podcast with in the future about how she survived the shootings and how it really brought her to faith. And she had gone to these big West Bowls, these big churches where a lot of people had, and the funerals, and it was really essential in her becoming an Orthodox Christian. We were living in Denver, trying to discern the next step in our life. We came to visit here and met those two older priests in downtown Salt Lake, and we never left Utah. We loved it. I was a school teacher. I taught special ed for self-contained intellectual disability class. It was great, and it was really wonderful in the Granite School District. And I was a chanter at the church, and then I was a deacon for a couple of years. Most parishes have a deacon or two. It's usually not a paid position. But you're busy all around and helping with the worship, teaching, catechism, and such. And so the church was flourishing. I became the priest about 15 years ago. Both priests retired, and I gave up teaching, and it's a full-time job, and not well-paying, but full-time. And the church grew a lot. I mean, on a Sunday, we have 300 people, and it was really growing. People driving from Utah County, people driving from Santa Quin. It's a long haul. I know it really, really well now.
Yeah.
We have people right now who drive from Moab every Sunday. I mean, so it's really, and we have a new church we started in St. George, which is doing well and has a full-time priest. But essentially, everyone was kind of coming, and we felt that like downtown was a hard place to grow. There's no place for the kids to run afterwards. Not that you need Christianity in the city, you need Christianity in the country, everywhere. So our goal was to find some property to have a country parish, like a village life. I think people are missing simplicity now in their life. Everything's so complicated with the phones and with all the internet, and such just real life, is like so important. So we began looking and realized, man, things are so expensive. It's crazy. So we first were looking in the southern part of the valley, like Bluffdale, places like that. Yeah. We found property. We even put an offer on it. I think our signs are still up there, but it was $2 million just for the property. I mean, we're small. And then I said, let's look and go point in the mountain. And some people, if the purpose of the church was to relieve the packedness downtown at the church, didn't quite have that effect. I mean, some people would choose to go down there, relieve the people that were coming up, but it became clear that maybe this is not just for that reason. It's also to bring, because Utah County is a different animal. As soon as you go around the corner, you feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel it. And I don't mean
what,
that
80s, 70s. I mean, all statistics are made up on the spot, it seems, but a very high percentage LDS. I think highest in all of America.
For sure. And so going down there we essentially said, okay, Lord, where can we afford to buy property? So we found this property, and it was in Payson. And initially everyone was freaking out. And they said, no, it's way too far. It's way too far. No one's going to go. No one lives there. None of our people live in Payson. A few handful here and there, some in Provo, Orem, things like that. No one's going to. We just prayed about it, and I said, well, first of all, we can't afford anything else. That's pretty motivating. And I said, and second of all, this is exactly why God, let's do it. People thought I was crazy. But without a vision, the people perish, right? So we made a vision for it, and we found this property, and so we had no money. None. And so we scrimped and saved, and everyone, life savings, everything, we raised $400,000 to build the church just a few years ago and bought the property. It was a miracle, really. But then we were broke. And what are you going to do? So it was just farmland. It was, it was just horses and...
Not to interrupt you. So I've been to your church a couple times. You live on the property too. There's a house, right? Was that was the house established before you bought it?
Nope. It was just farmland. There was nothing there. It was just... So I just walk around with my prayer rope and just praying the Jesus prayer mostly, and just praying for God to... Because we have no high rollers. We have lots of generous people. People tithe to the church. We have no money. We tithe to help others rather than receive money from headquarters or whatever that, So we had nothing. And then, again, I just said, well, let's put a vision together. And I'd seen a beautiful church in Ukraine, the countryside, that I wanted it to fit into the mountains and look beautiful. Anyway, I found this, and I drew it up one night, and I brought it to a great architect at Harris Architects. And he's the LDS guy. And overnight, he made a drawing, and it was spectacular, and it felt like it fitted in with these gold domes that would be like with the crosses that would...
It's very something out of like Kiev and Rus looking, yeah.
When you see it, it's like we think of the domes as being like a lighthouse in a shipwrecked world that would call people to, and you can see it from the highway. The idea, this. So it was a great pipe dream at this point. Great, nice idea, but you put together a vision. We really prayed, and amazing. People gave that didn't even go to our community. First person that gave like $200,000. They're just visitors who were so amazed. And when they saw our people bleed for it, and we really all put it out there, one person gave almost $1 million, boom, boom, and it was over $3 million to build this little church.
Right.
But it's really spectacular, and it's frescoed inside. You should come see one of the best icon painters in the world. I met him in Bulgaria. He's painting a church, in Serbia, that fits 10,000 people. And he came and painted Little Payson.
Wow.
With all the scenes from the life of Jesus and, his birth, his resurrection, his crucifixion. And there's an emphasis on beauty, on it being beautiful. And then we started, and there was no people really. So here's this gift. We have no mortgage by the grace of God. I've begged and borrowed everywhere. Everyone gave their money. So we still struggle to get by because we're helping a lot of people rather than being able to. But from initially having 20 people and wonder how this is going to go, trusting in God. And now every Sunday, about 80 to 100 people now, and almost full little church. And with a plan, God willing, if God wants to build a larger church on the property, which would be a Sunday church, feast day church that would fit a few hundred, and build a baptistry. And we actually have the first Orthodox Christian cemetery now, just blessed. And we haven't buried anybody yet. We find that really powerful to be able to bury our own folks and take care of them and pray for them in those ways, and to have a hall and place for the children and such. So for now, it's a country church. It's a village church. There's a bunch of dirt for the kids to play in, but it's 5 acres. They can run after church and they can be there. But it's drawing people from all backgrounds, like I'm sure you're seeing, like mostly former LDS, but atheists.
Yeah.
Pagans.
And our listeners will... Maybe we can entice them to come out to rural Utah, but in Payson, it's so crazy because you do the further south you get, the more country or more
cowboy, yeah, for sure.
But then you have a huge LDS temple that's right there in Payson. You have
it's across the highway from us,
right?
Yeah.
You have
a Hindu temple,
the Krishna temple, and they have like a color festival all in the spring that they do, and thousands of people go to that and don't even know what they're doing. They're
participating in pagan worship, but they call themselves Christians. It's unbelievable.
Do they call themselves Christians at that temple thing?
I'm saying,
I get what you're saying.
People,
okay,
absolutely.
People that call themselves Christians
for sure.
and go there.
Go do the
thousands
color
of BYU
stuff.
students go there.
Sure.
And people have asked me, can we have a blessing to go? No, absolutely not. It isn't just like fun and game, but what we do with our bodies and things matters, right? So I'm glad you brought that up.
We had one particular ministry that we were connected to, John and Lori Cower. Shout out to them if they hear the podcast. They actually live in Santa Quin. They're part of First Baptist Church in Provo, but he's a full-time evangelist, and he had organized a event to go down to the Color Festival, and it was very simple. What we did was, and they headed this up, and she and I actually went. Yeah. Lana was with me that day. We had baby wipes, and we had literature, and literature.
Wipe it off.
Yeah, it was. Everybody was coming back full of chalk in their eyes and
paint,
everything,
whatever.
And we gave them a baby wipe, and they were very appreciative of that. And then we gave them somebody had written a track that was like the true Color Festival. It was based off of John's the epistle, the Revelation, the Apocalypse, and about everybody around God's throne from every tribe and every color, and we just gave the gospel. And it was so funny that we're mentioning this, and just a little side note here, but. Of course, the majority of people that were going were part of the LDS faith, and we did ask the question, do you understand what this is? And they were like, well, no, we're just here for the fun. So there's the disconnect of what we believe compared to, what are we doing was definitely evident in that particular
And I think that's
festival.
awesome you bring it up because, again, Utah County, super LDS, and then you have the Hare Krishna Temple, and people would see me and go, are you at the Hare Krishna Temple? No. So, I'll tell them Orthodox priests and so on, and 10 minutes in, they'll be like, so we're Christians. Are you we're the original Christians. Like, you're killing me. Look, like, are you a rabbi? No, I'm not holding a cross up. And I say, you're not a rabbi? No, rabbis wouldn't wear crosses.
Right.
Why? Well, because they
don't believe in Jesus.
Really.
Right.
So there's this, it's a unique place, but I will tell you this, and this is a shout out to the mayor, Bill. He's awesome in Payson, and the whole city council, so kind to us. I mean, people are so secular in some places in California. You want to build a pergola, and they want to destroy the church in many ways or control it. They bent over backwards to honor our traditions and to honor our, it was awesome to work with them. I'm just telling honestly, and they came and viewed the church, and they're going to come again, and they were so supportive to allow us to be there, and they're so warm when I see them in town. And again, yes, in my house, right? Like the parish said, we want you to live here, and that's a traditional thing to have the parish priest live right by, so we can walk to the church and do those things. So I have this little piece of property. I built my house, so I personally built it there, so I lived there, right on the church property there, and I was wondering how it would go, how he'd be treated and everything. It's been fantastic. Like I love going in, again, traffic stops sometimes. What are you doing, boy? What are you wearing?
Does that really happen where you get
really? But but then I have my kids and I have this big beard, so maybe it's a little but the conversations are always really respectful. And now I feel like part of the community, and we have people that come from all over, like I said. But I think, and of course, everything's getting built up everywhere, right? Silicon Slopes and all this other stuff. So, having said all that, it's been shocking actually how kind everyone's been and how open people have been and want to see the iconography and tour it. And, and I'm pretty direct, for instance, like I'm probably, in some ways people misunderstand me. So I don't go to a lot of the interfaith stuff and things like this because I feel like what we do matters. In other words, what we think has interactions with how we pray and things like this. And if we don't have a unity of faith, just kind of sweeping under the rug and just singing a song doesn't take care of the fact that right? So I'll have a conversation with anybody. I'll talk with anyone. So I'll help anybody with laundry or food or whatever it is. But I always like to talk about these things in some way. So maybe I'm not really connected with the other churches down there or anything like that, beyond just waving them, know if they need anything, they can come ask. We just kind of do our thing. And maybe that seems cold. But actually what it is I've seen a lot of, sometimes these things from our perspective, they deteriorate into the least common denominator. Or when I go to BYU and I speak, they had that tabernacle set up a couple years ago, biblical tabernacle scale model. Yeah. And they had a Catholic priest come speak, and they had me speak, and they had a Muslim speak, and they had a rabbi speak, and they had a guy from the place Orem, Center Point Church in Orem.
Oh, yeah.
And I got up there and I'm thinking to myself, what are we doing here? I mean, and I actually got up and said that in front of thousands of people. I just said, we're here just to go this is neat. This is neat. Oh, it's I'm boggled to have people that, I respect everyone. I have Muslim friends. I have everyone. You know what I'm saying? But truth matters. Right. I go, everything can't be right here. Is everybody right? Are you gonna leave tonight and go, for when the rabbi says, "Isn't it nice we can all tabernacle together?" And I say, that's not what Jews believe.
Right.
That's not, or for the Muslim to talk about
right.
We don't share the same faith, actually. And far from being offended, I had a line of hundreds of students that wanted to talk. They said, "Thank you for standing up for something."
Yeah.
Because they just want someone that actually believes it and isn't woke.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's
a really good point.
That's a great point. And if we could, because we're running up against the clock on our first one, and if you're okay, we'd love for you to stay with us. And we want to have another episode where I think we want to fill in. The first episode we really wanted to kind of think about hear your story, hear how you became, but that's a great lead in to some questions about truth in itself and kind of how we can kind of get a little bit more in the nuts and bolts of what is it in a day of worship and what makes Greek Orthodox kind of unique compared to, we can go Catholicism, we can go with us, we just talk about the differences, and especially, and I think that's a great launching pad to think about or to talk about the symposium, because I actually have a story regarding that too at BYU. So our guest has been Father Justin, and he has he's the priest. Is he priest? Is the proper title?
Yes.
Of the Greek Orthodox Church in Payson, Utah. So we're going to
clarificate. Just to not confuse.
Be careful to say Greek or Russian. And again, our church is under the Antiochian. So again, those 5 ancient patriarchs, they were first called Christians in Antioch. So our bishop, for instance, our metropolitan, he is from Syria in Lebanon. So that's where his original roots are from. So
proper would just say Orthodox.
Yeah. Orthodox Christian.
Orthodox Christian
just
church.
to distinguish that. So
got it.
But that said, it's fine to say, this person might say, I'm a Greek Orthodox Christian, so-and-so. That just knows the roots. But the danger in that is that it seems like it's just this little pigeonhole.
Like a racial thing.
It's a racial. People often go like, I'm not Greek, can I come? And go, of course.
Right.
And so something must be wrong about the way it's being put forward. Like the Catholic Church has a great name. In Greek, Catholic.
Right.
Katholikos means universal,
right.
Whole, lacking nothing. Frankly, we would say that we are the truly Catholic, not Roman Catholic, but Catholic Church.
Right.
Because it's the original, right? So.
Right. Well, join us again. We're gonna sign off, and want to thank you for being with us. And intriguing conversation. And if you have any questions or any comments, please, you can follow us on our Facebook page, where you can, put a comment into a particular email format if you want to, or you can email Art City Church, and we'd love to have some correspondence with you. And if you're interested in more about learning about Father Justin or about Orthodoxy, what would be like is there a quick way like they can connect with you?
Sure. There's Saint Xenia, Xenia, Saint Xenia Payson.
Okay.
.com, I think. If you look up Orthodox Church Payson, there's only one.
Yeah. So if you seek, put that in your Google.
And we have and it has my contact info, and it has a good basic what is Orthodox Christianity and such as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us. We're going to pick up next time and ask some more questions. But again, thank you for being here, Lyric, our guest, Lana.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, she didn't really say a whole lot, but she's listening. So maybe she'll have...
I'm intrigued.
She's intrigued. Yeah. But thanks again and for joining us here at Faith and Fellowship, and we will see you next time.